Welcome to our third featured author chat for the 2023 Lamb Summer Reading Challenge. I hope you're all enjoying the reading challenge. I love seeing which reading categories you're checking off each week. If you have any questions about the challenge, or you need the link to the category post on Facebook, for example, replay links for the post for these chats, RSVP links for future ones, or anything else related to the challenge and how it works, all you have to do is head over to joyerankatori.com/summer-reading. And now I am thrilled to welcome the fabulous Annie Lisenby, author of the 2022 Missouri Indie Author Project winner of Three-Letter Name. Welcome, Annie, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Joy. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this chat all summer.
Yay.
So, Annie, just to let you guys know, Annie will be giving away a copy of A Three-Letter Name. And for chances to win that, be sure to go to my Facebook page, comment on, we've had 4 Facebook posts so far this week. Comment on those, enjoy, just kind of jump into the fun there. And then also, if you're watching this replay, comment on the replay. If you showed up live, you get 20 points. If you comment on the replay later, you get 10 points. So building up points, that's how you can win an autographed copy. And I will check all of those, look for comments and everything by noon tomorrow, which is July 16th, I think, if I have my dates right. And that'll be noon Central Time. All right, so with all of that out of the way, let's dive into our chat. So Annie, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about the book you're giving away.
Okay, well, again, thank you, Joy. My name is Annie Lisenby. I live in Southwest Missouri in the Ozarks, and I write mostly teen fiction, but I've also written for like Chicken Soup for the Soul and have been a regular contributor to a local magazine for about 3.5 years. My book that I entered in the Indie Author Project for the state of Missouri, as Joy said, here's what it looks like. It's a 3-letter name. And I would define it as a teen or YA survival romance that features characters with disabilities. So it focuses on 2 people who didn't want to be stuck together, but they're stuck together because of circumstances well beyond their control. And they're having to learn how to work through their new disabilities while also trying to save everybody on the island where they live.
Talk about high stakes, right?
Yeah.
And I absolutely fell in love with your characters. They're definitely likable and wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I kind of fell in love with them too.
That's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So would you please share, because I've heard this before and I want all the readers to hear your inspirations behind the naming system and the beasts in your book.
Okay, well, the beasts, some of the inspiration there was I even saw a lady who was a literary agent on Twitter at one point, and she was saying how there's always like bad animals in books and they're always like dogs. And she said, but I'm really scared of cats. And so I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So the beasts are based on like a feline like large cat, basically. I also have 2 cats. So at times when they were playing with each other, I would kind of watch their movements and take notes of how to describe that later. As far as the naming system, well, my husband and I, we lived in Asia for about 3 years. And when we were there, we had learned about in ancient times that if a girl was born, then she was not actually given a name. Her first name, she was referred to as her father's name, that person's daughter. So like my dad's name is Larry. So my name would have just been Larry's daughter. And if there's more than one, it'd be like Larry's first daughter, Larry's second daughter. There wasn't much to differentiate. And then whenever that girl got married, she was so-and-so's husband. So I'm married to Brian. So I would be Brian. So it says wife, sorry. So I would be Brian's wife. So you go from Larry's daughter to Brian's wife. So your identity is not in who you are as an individual, but in who your role is within that community. And then lastly, when the girl had a male son, well, that's a bit a bit redundant. When they had their first child and it was a son, then they would be known as that person's mother. So if I had a son and named him Tim, then I would be Tim's mom. So it would be going from Larry's daughter to Brian's wife to Tim's mom. So when I was looking at how to create this world of my book, I just thought, well, it would be interesting if they did it just with a singular letter. So the letters in the names of the characters in this book for women, it has to do with the father's name, and then their position, their job in the community, then their husband's name, and then the subsequent children that they had would add more letters.
I found that fascinating. And I love how you take pieces of real life things and you put them into this world in a slightly different way. I think that that's one of the neatest things about writing fiction. There's a lot more fact in it than I think sometimes people realize.
Yeah, it's fun just to take a little thread of fact and go with it. And I kind of liked using this kind of naming system, partly because when I had first heard that, it kind of made me angry as a woman, like, oh, you're just defined by who you are to someone else. And so I wrote a character who also did not like that system.
She lets it be known.
Yes, regularly.
I love that. Well, also, you kind of have put in your past and your experience with sign language into this book as well, or it's kind of been part of your inspiration behind it. So I'm curious, what opportunities have you had because of your ability to sign?
Well, first, I should say I'm not an excellent signer. I was part of an elementary school that was a magnet school that was integrated with deaf, hard of hearing, and hearing children. And so I did learn some basic signs when I was young, and I took one semester of ASL when I was in college. And so my sign is low level, but the blessing of sign language is that most people I've signed with that are deaf or hard of hearing, they're okay if I finger spell. That I can just use the alphabet if I don't know a word. But it's really interesting that even just knowing a little bit of sign language, like there was a time some years ago, I was in a community near Branson, and during the winter time, all the shows, all the theme parks, everything just shuts down. So the community is very much out of work for all the month of January and most of February, at least. And so there were community dinners that were to help people who were, in that in between phase. And I went and there were some people signing. And at one point I signed with them a little bit and they were like, whoa, like, oh, you actually know this. And there was one of the gentlemen I would actually see sometimes in the community who worked at a hardware store. And so when he saw me, he'd always, make a point of stopping and saying hi. I also worked as an actress back in the day. My background is all in theater. And so I worked at a theme park, and there were times that they would have people like, it was a train ride, and I was a cowgirl on the train. But it was really sweet that like one time there was a little boy who was there with his mom, and they were both obviously deaf, and they had an interpreter with them. And after we did our whole show that was really cheesy, but we're cowboys with guns and things like that, I just went up to him afterwards and I just signed and said, "Were you scared?" And he looked at me and just signed no back really big. And it was just a really sweet moment just because sign language is a beautiful language that a lot of people like to watch, but I don't think people know it, or they're hesitant to possibly use it. So a lot of deaf people aren't used to interacting with sign with hearing people, at least in the rural areas where I live.
Such a beautiful and expressive language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I noticed on your website, you actually have a lot of book related goodies like discussion questions and some other little things on there. Would you like to tell people a little bit about what they can find on your site?
Oh, absolutely. Anybody who wants to check out more about a three-letter name, either before or after reading it, on my website at annielisenby.com, you can click on the tab for a three-letter name, and there you will find a map of the island where my main characters live. It's a very rustic place, and so it points out some of the paths that the characters take in their adventure. And you can also find, as Joy said, a discussion question. There's also some recipes from some different things that they enjoy in the book. I'm trying to think if there is. Oh, and there's a deleted scene. that shows the main character Elle's kind of at the point where, because she is hard of hearing after an illness, and it kind of shows her at that moment where she was hearing and then she wasn't.
Oh wow, I need to read that. I haven't read that yet. I'm gonna hop on there and, and get that very quickly. Okay, so I'm curious, what has been the most amazing experience for you because of this book?
Well, this was my first novel. It was my debut. What was the first I wrote? The first one I wrote needs a lot of work. This one was published through a small independent press that I connected with through a Twitter pitch party. And so just having the experience of working with a small press, having the experience of working with an editor and cover designers was very, very wonderful. And then for winning this award, I was floored to win the Indie Author Project for my state, and it just kind of helps open the door. And in some ways, it's another way of saying, "Oh wow, I guess this is a pretty good book." Even though I love it with all my heart, it's just nice to have readers share that love.
Definitely. And it's one that many librarians are actually the ones who voted on. So that's
Mhm.
huge to see that librarians recognize that you have a really great story here and they're eager to share it with their readers, their people who come to the library.
Absolutely. Librarians are the best. And
Yes.
they're the ones that do recommend things. I even have a friend who, and she's just a shelving librarian. She just works a small job for a little extra money in Springfield, Missouri. And she even put in a request for my book, and they bought 2 copies. And when it came into her branch, she put it on display. And, librarians, when they do things like that, it does make a difference whenever librarians are familiar, especially when you're an independent author and you don't have big five backing, or even just that big any kind of logo from a big five company, or big five publisher. It just having someone just to help support you and say, yes, this is a story that people need to read, is a huge, huge honor.
It really is. Yes. And something that I think a lot of readers may not realize is a lot of libraries do have some sort of a system where you can request books. So
Absolutely.
if you know of an indie author or a book that your library may not have, you can always request it. And it's the same with your local independent bookstores. I love supporting indie bookstores. And if you go in, if they don't already have a book on the shelf, they can definitely order whatever you're looking for. So, and they might get it in and say, hey, this is a pretty good book. I think other readers in our area would like it. So, those are some ways readers can actually be a huge help to especially indie authors.
Oh, absolutely. Just requesting a book at the library.
Hmm.
And if it's, even if you have friends, like say if you read it in a book club or something like that, and everybody requested to have a copy of the library, that would just even make it look a little more popular and appealing.
Exactly. All right. So, you mentioned before that you've been published in several Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I'm curious, do you have a favorite of those stories? And also, and this is, it may be related or it may not be, but I would love for you to share what you're currently writing and working on.
Okay. Well, I would say probably my favorite. I like all my chicken soup stories, of course. But the one that I was really proud of, and one that is reflective in my writing, was actually it was accepted just before the pandemic hit and did not get. It was delayed on the release and everything because of that. But it's a collection of short stories about strong women and kind of women's empowerment. It was supposed to come out around Mother's Day originally, and in there I wrote about from when I worked as a professional stunt performer and when I did stage combat back in my younger days coming out of the theater world, and what it was like just being a woman in a group of men, and that sometimes it was awkward, sometimes it was nice, but other times it was just kind of like I had to stand up, and sometimes I walked out of conversations and stuff because I didn't agree with how much of the man talk that was going on. As far as what I'm working on now, I did sign with a literary agent, so I do have a teen rom com that is currently on submission with publishers, and that is such a long process. We started back in January, And I finally at least got a few rejections. And I have some others that have the full manuscript but haven't decided yet. And we're still working through a list of editors, different publishers for that with my agent. I have on my website, and I need to add my last chapter to it, but I had a serial story I wrote for my local magazine, and it was one chapter a month. And I just published the last chapter recently, just came out. So that's called Keeping Secrets, and it's also on AnnieLisenby.com under the tab Keeping Secrets. And that one is centered around a girl who's 15 and discovers in a very strange situation that her mom is in the CIA, and now they're kind of on the run from the bad guys. And the mom's been gone for like 2 years, so she's very surprised. Outside of that, I do have hoping for release in September. I'm working on a short book that goes with a speaking series I do called From Stage to Page, where I share different techniques that I use from the world of theater in writing. So it includes like how to build character like an actor would with all the rich details. And I even have a section on how to write fight scenes and romance scenes without losing where your characters are in space and ending up giving someone a third arm or something. Because I know I've written myself in some scenes that were not very good, and I had to go back and edit a good ways out of that. So that hopefully will come out in September. And then other than that, I have a YA contemporary fantasy that takes place in Southeast Missouri that I'm very excited about, and I miss. I haven't been able to write on it recently because I've had other projects to finish up, but I'm very much excited to get back to that one.
Wow, you have got a lot going on.
Probably too much.
But it all sounds so wonderful. I'm excited. And I definitely want that book that's coming in September. I'm very excited about that.
Wonderful. I might need some beta readers. Okay.
I'll give you all the feedback.
Nice.
Oh, all right. So since this is a summer reading challenge, I have a few questions for you about reading, because the thing is, writers are readers first. So do you have any special memories of summer reading as a kid?
I remember just my mom taking me to the library at the public library. So like not going to the school one where, you knew everything. And I just remember being able to go there. And the sweet thing was that she shared with me some books that she had read when she was younger. And it was just really nice being able to check some of those out and read those. And, when we share books and even movies, whatever things that touch us, then we share a little bit of who we are as a person as well. So I just remember being probably 11 or 12 and going to the little public library in the historic building. It's no longer there. It got blown away by a tornado about 20 years ago, but this beautiful historic building, and my mom saying, "Oh, these are books that I read when I was a kid," and her just sharing that love of reading with me too.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things about libraries. It brings together people of all ages. And like you said, you can kind of connect through those stories. And that's something special.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what are you currently reading?
Right now, oh gosh, I'm reading probably 4 things at once. One thing I'm reading for work for a book club is Marissa Meyer. She's a teen author. She wrote the Lunar Chronicles, started with Cinder. I really love that series, but we're reading through Renegades, the first book in that trilogy. That one is about time in the future, almost post-apocalyptic, but people have superhero powers. And a lot of it is like, well, who should be in control, the good guys or the bad guys? So one character is a good guy, one character is a bad guy, and they both have struggles with their identity in those places as well. I'm also reading Rivals by Catherine McGee, another teen book. It is the 3rd book in the American Royals series. And I really enjoyed this one. Those are, Renegades is a dual POV, so 2 character perspectives. In Catherine McGee's American Royals series, it's a 4-person perspective. And it takes the assumption, the what if whenever George Washington was offered to become king of America, what if he had said yes? So it's modern day, but it's the American royals who are part of the monarchy for the United States, which isn't the United States, it's just America, I think.
That's interesting. That is a really great what if question.
Hmm.
That's one of those ideas where you're like, man, why didn't I think of that?
Well, and also I have other ideas that are not really similar, but kind of the same feel. And I've got a what if one that, oh, I can't wait to write it too. But
That's so exciting. So, my last question about reading for you is what authors or books inspire you?
oh gosh, I rarely find an author that doesn't inspire me in some way. Even I read different genres sometimes. Some I stay mostly in teen, but with my kids, I read a lot of picture books and middle grade things with them as well. And then I do read some adult fiction. Also, I'm not a nonfiction reader much. There are some like memoirs and such that I've really really enjoyed. I love hearing true stories, and when they're told really well, I'm just very captivated. Um, gosh, yeah. As far as like favorites, yeah. Right now, I stick mostly in the teens. A lot of romance. I do read a lot of romance.
And
And
inspiration does come from all over, doesn't it?
yeah, I mean, I just, yeah, I'm inspired by this person's what if question. I'm inspired by the world building in another one. I'm a very scattered, eclectic type of person. So yeah, I take little nuggets almost from everywhere. It's, yeah, like I said, it's very rare that I found a book where I thought, man, that wasn't any good. It's very rare that I won't finish a book either. I can only think of one probably in the last 5 years that I put down and walked away from.
Well, and too, knowing what you like and what you don't like, it's easier to kind of pinpoint those books that you know are going to be winners in your book.
Oh,
In, in your book.
yeah.
I didn't mean to do that, but
Well, and I mean that is one thing that, especially whenever you are writing, a lot of people encourage you read your genre a
Mhm.
lot so you're familiar with it, partly for marketing, but also trends and things like that. So like I'm writing a contemporary fantasy, and I thought, well, I haven't read a lot of contemporary fantasy. I've read some fantasy, but some of the fantasy books, I know some people really adore the deep world building, all of the details, the political systems and things like that. But I find sometimes I just get a little lost in those details, and I want to get back to the characters, and that comes from my days of working as an actress. I'm all about the character. Plot is very important, but I really like character even more personally. So I'm working on contemporary fantasy, and I have to think, oh well, a friend of mine even recommended a book, and it wasn't my cup of tea in the end. It had the contemporary fantasy elements, which were great. I just didn't care for the methodology in which they told the story and some of the ways that they gave some details that were a little bit more graphic. But it's nice though, because whenever you read a book, you can say, I like these things, but I didn't really like these other things. So whenever I write, I also kind of hone in on, oh, but I didn't like how this author did this, like cheesy love scenes. Even in my contemporary fantasy, I was working on a conversation between the love interests, and I was like, oh gosh, this is getting really cheesy. This is so unbelievable. And for a while, I let the characters drag me along down that road. But that's where I stopped writing it most recently, because I was like, nope, I got to go get some fresh air, and then I'll come back to this, because I don't know if I like this element that's in it.
and that's the good thing too about, rewriting and writing with layers, like kind of layering your writing is figuring out, okay, this isn't working, but I don't know right now why. And then coming back to it later after a little bit of time, being like, okay, this is how I can fix it.
Oh, exactly. And then I also sometimes have to be careful of not judging my writing when I'm in the middle of it. I know Anne Lamott wrote a popular book, Bird by Bird, and in it she has a chapter called, "Crappy First Drafts." She doesn't use the word crappy, but I'm not sure if we're going PG-13 on this video chat. So, but the whole point, she says, is write it. You can edit it later. So I know a couple times when I've been in a rut and things like that, I've kind of just been like, okay, just write it, just get it out on the page and push through. And honestly, I'll be surprised. Sometimes I've come back, and in those moments, I found some real gems and nuggets that I've ended up keeping in my books.
Well, this is fantastic. I love hearing about the process. Different writers have different ways that they write, how they approach revisions and self edits and all of those things. And I think that that's fascinating. So, in just a minute, I'm going to open it up for our attendee. If you would like to ask any questions, you can either put it in the chat and I'll read the question, or you can unmute yourself and ask. Before we get to the question, though, I will ask you to share with us where we can follow you so we can make sure that everybody knows where to find you.
Great. As I've already said like twice, my website is annielisenby.com. I have a newsletter, so there's a sign up form for that at the bottom of any of the pages on my website. I'm also on most of the major social media. I can be found on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I'm not as active on Instagram and TikTok, but I'm there. And I also just recently signed up for Threads, and I'm trying to figure that one out. That one's a little confusing to me still, but I'm kind of watching and occasionally posting there. And I do have on my website some events where I do go and give writing workshops, or I was recently accepted to the Louisville Book Festival in Louisville, Kentucky. That'll be in November. So I'll be going to that as well. And so there are some things on my Facebook page, or not my Facebook, on my website. I'll share it on Facebook and in my newsletter as well, but where you can find me in person.
That's so exciting. Congratulations about the Louisville Book Festival. Yay.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be fun. 2 long days, but it should be a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. I know. I love book festivals. If you've never been to a book festival, they really are a lot of fun for readers and for writers. So I'm sure there's probably one in your state.
Oh, yeah. Well, Louisville is a little bit of a drive for us because I'm pretty far in the southwest corner of Missouri. But the nice thing is this is hosted through a library, and they're going to have about 100 authors, I believe, and speakers as well. So it's going to be a really big, fun event, and it's been going for a little while. So a lot of readers around there know it well.
That's fantastic. So do we have any questions for Annie? Okay.
Fox does.
Yay! Okay. Oh, great question. How did you come up with the idea of the setting for the book? Is it based off of any specific place? Great question.
Very good questions. The physical location of the book, well, let me say the time and kind of the feel of the book, as far as it is a rustic community, there's no technology and whatnot. That was connected kind of with the idea of the naming system and it being a little bit more of an archaic culture. If you read the book and if you look at the wedding ceremony, there are some suggestions as to where the time period might be and how they got to where they are. I won't tell you that unless you want me to spoil that part. And as far as the actual location, it is based on a real location. Part of the idea is that, the oceans have risen. And so I based it on a place where I worked at a theme park that was in North Carolina, and it's actually based on a particular mountain. A lot of people looked at it and said, oh, well, it's, she's on an island, it's tropical. And I was like, no, there's a lot of islands that are not tropical. So, I liked North Carolina because it's a place that also gets cold, but also is hot, has the varied temperatures. And so I did a lot of work in research in, you won't know that just reading the book, but for me to make it realistic for the world that I was creating, I did a lot of research on, plants that are native, trees that are native to that area, resources that people could use in, especially because there's some healing and such, because the main character, Els, her mother is a healer, and they call her a fixer in there. That's their word. She's a fixer and she helps heal people. So I enjoyed researching, what resources would someone have if they lived in that part of North Carolina.
Love that. So any other questions? Or two, Annie, if there's anything else that you'd like to share?
Oh, trying to think. I'm just grateful to be a part of this. As we were talking about being an indie author, it's sometimes hard to make connections with people. I'm grateful for connections I have with some indie bookstores that are in some towns nearby. But being able to actually connect directly with readers can be a bit of a challenge. There is consideration of doing an audiobook for 3-letter names. So I need to send that out and see if people are interested. There's a lot of stuff that's up in the air on that. Because making those decisions, it's, do I try to sell it through my agent as just the audiobook rights, or do I just record it myself because I'm an actress and throw it up on Audible, you know?
That's great. And, I think this is something that's been kind of coming back and forth in my mind lately is how amazing it is to be part of the publishing industry at this point in time because we have so many options and they're all fantastic options. So that's
And
exciting.
that's so true. I'm currently working at a library for about the next month until I do a job transition. And what's interesting was like I had some new books that had come in by an author, Melanie Dickerson. She's written a lot of teen books as well, and kind of did a series based on kind of almost like Disney princesses, but with new styles. Like I remember listening to one of them that was about Mulan, but she had some new books that came out, and I was like, "Oh, these are interesting." They're for an adult audience instead of a teen audience. And I looked at them. I thought, "Well, I wonder who published these," because I knew her other books had been published with a bigger publisher. And I was like, "No, they were self-published." So it's really interesting too that there's a lot of authors that are kind of working different directions. And another book that came in, I was reading the bio on the author, and I thought it was very interesting because it said she writes under this name for this genre, and then she had two other names that she wrote under for two other genres. So, as independent people trying to define who you are as an author and getting everything together, it's really a challenge, And so, yeah, I think there's no one path to publishing anymore.
I definitely agreed with that. And we've got another great question here.
Great.
So, this is more on the creation side. How do you go through the process of writing a realistic romance, especially in the situation Els and Samuel are in? That's something I struggle with in my own writing. Okay.
Ah, yeah, that's a good situation. Well, for anybody who's watching that isn't familiar, and Fox, I'm not sure exactly if you've read the book yet or not, but in this situation, both of these people are Els and Samuel are basically literally the first line of the book is marriage. Oh, you finished the book. Thank you, Fox. Yay, thank you for reading it. So for those who haven't read it, who might be watching a recording later, they both literally choose between marriage or death in a way. Els does, and Samuel is running away from lots of things. So making it realistic, it takes a lot of imagination on my part. And it also, I got great insight from some beta readers. So for me, as I use a lot of my acting training, and I think if I was the character Els, if I were improvising a scene, how would I go through these steps? And I also think about what is it the characters want? What are their fears? What are their passions? What is it that's keeping them from getting what they want? So, in essence, Els, she just wants to be good to her village. She just wants to protect the people in her village. And she just wants to do that. She doesn't want to get married or anything. And when she gets married, she thinks she can't do that anymore. But because Fox read the book, Fox knows that did not happen exactly that way. She did discover that she still could make a contribution, especially after she had lost her hearing as well. So making it realistic is just imagining the characters in those situations, what they want, what they have to lose if they don't get it. Are they willing to lose something to get what they want? And then also having good beta readers who will go through. There was one point in the book that my husband read. It was with a male character. And he said, "I don't think it would happen that way." And I read through it and I said, "Yeah, you're right." And I made kind of a big change, but it was a good change. And it was important, but because of his insight, it didn't change the overall story, but it just changed how a couple of the male characters interacted.
That's great. That's a fantastic answer. Fantastic question. That is wonderful. I could just talk forever
I
with you.
know.
Oh, this is great. Well, we're kind of winding down on time. So I'm going to go ahead and just remind everybody that tomorrow, that's July 16th, I will announce the winner of the autographed copy of A Three-Letter Name. I'll make that announcement on my Facebook page. So if you're not already following the fun there, please do. Just search Joy E. Rankatory on Facebook and you will find it. So Monday starts a brand new week in our Lamb Summer Reading Challenge, and we'll have a fresh featured author for you to interact with next week. But thank you so much, Annie, for being with us today, for sharing about your amazing book and about your writing process and all of the things.
Well, thank you, Joy, for having me, and thank you, Fox, for joining us because those were really excellent questions. And
They
I
were.
enjoy. You seem like someone I might really enjoy talking about writing with some more. So, thank you for participating in this.
Yes, definitely. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time. Happy reading.